By the power of the mantra, kirtan, everyone is transported. We're no longer in New Zealand. We've gone beyond the coverings of the material universe to the spiritual sky. Namo Shrishtam Manamapi Vishuchiputam Atra Surupam Rupam Tasya Kracha Muri Purim Maturim Ushvatim Radhakundam Giribaram Ahoradikamanavasam Prakto yasa pratita kripaya Shri Gurum Tammanatosmi Gurave Gaura Chandraya Radhikaya Tadale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namah. First of all, I bow down thousands and thousands of times, and I offer my heart like flower petals at the lotus feet of my spiritual master, my Guru, Nitilila Parist Om Vishnupada Ashtotarastas Vishimad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. Secondly, I bow down to my Guru's Guru, and to his Guru, and to his Guru, and all the great spiritual masters in an unbroken chain going back thousands of years to Sri Krishna, the speaker of Bhagavad Gita. That is the channel through which the current of transcendental knowledge, and more importantly, the current of divine love descends from ancient times until this present day, today, the day before Easter Sunday. So I'm bowing down to all the great spiritual masters in our tradition. And finally, I offer my pranam, my namaskar to all of you, my dear brothers and sisters. Vantikopali. Krishna.
Srila Gurudev ki
Jai.
So, my dear Venu Krishna invited me here, all the way I've come from Vrindavan, India, that very holy place of many thousands of temples on the bank of Jamuna, which is connected with the culture of pure bhakti, pure devotion, bhakti yoga. So he invited me here to speak on the topic of meditation and enlightenment. So I know that you're all very interested in this subject. And just by looking at your eyes, I can see that many of you have been meditating for many years. Perhaps many years more than me. So just a few words to introduce myself. I was born in England, and from my childhood I was very much attracted to meditation. In fact, before I even knew the word meditation, when I was only about as far back as I can remember, about 2.5 years old, I used to put a cloth over my head and tell my parents, "Leave me, I have to think." And I would sit like in the lotus position and meditate. Then later I found out it's called meditation. And when I was 15 years old, my father gave me the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. There's no content there dealing with what has become today very popular, the gymnastic aspect of yoga, but rather the Yoga Sutras, they deal with the psychology of yoga, understanding especially our mind, the workings of our psychological body, and how that's connected also to the physical body, and how to enter into planes of trance, different levels of trance, to acquire knowledge and realization and enlightenment. So now I've been practicing since age 15 now for 41 years. And in 1988, I was fortunate to go to the house of a friend of mine. Maybe do you know George Harrison?
Yes.
Yeah, you know George Harrison? Yeah. So he had a big house just north of London, and he gave it to one of our spiritual masters. So I went there and lived for some years as a monk before moving to India. And then I've been in India for about over 30 years. In India, I studied under the guidance of my spiritual master. There's a picture here. I'm keeping here to honor him. Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami. And so I'm not here to represent my own idea in an independent way, but I'm here only like a puppet. And I'm praying that my spiritual master may use me like a flute. The flute is empty. It's because the flute is empty so the musician can blow and then the beautiful music will come out. So I'm praying that this evening I can empty myself and just become like a flute to deliver to you the transcendental message unchanged as it always was from thousands and thousands of years ago. The message of the Vedas, the message of Bhagavad Gita. So he was very kind to me. He made me go to school and learn Hindi and Bengali and Sanskrit, and I became his translator. And so he would generally, in India, speak in Hindi and a few sentences, then I would translate, then he would speak for a few minutes, I would translate for the international audiences, and also translate many books as well. I feel this is a great blessing in my life, because the essence of our life is service, to serve the Supreme Lord. We're all Atma, soul, spiritual beings, and we have a relation with Paramatma, the Supreme Being. And the relation between the individual soul and the Supreme Soul is one of loving service. And so that is especially manifest also by serving the saints, serving those who are dear to the Supreme Being. So now we will come to our subject for today, meditation and enlightenment. It's a very profound subject. There are many technical things that can be discussed, but I just want to touch on a few ideas this evening. So don't expect that it will be complete. Enlightenment in only 5 minutes, just add water. So it's not like that, but some profound basic principles that will be very valuable for everyone we want to convey this evening. So just first of all, so it says at the top there, it would say at the top if the projector wasn't from the 70s. So it says at the top, yoga, the definition. So we're going to look at some definitions of the word yoga. So first of all, in the Bhagavad Gita, there it is said, Samatvam yoga uchyate. Samatva, actually the English word same is the cognate. It comes from the Sanskrit sama. We say sama in Sanskrit, and English is same. It's the same. Because English, Italian, French, Spanish, almost all the language, Russian, especially Lithuanian, is very close. They're all Indo-European languages, so they're derived from the mother language, Sanskrit. So sama means same, and samatva means the quality of sameness, being in mental equilibrium. That means in your life when you face a difficulty, when you face a problem, that your mind remains calm and undisturbed. And if you attain great success, you don't become proud and start celebrating and popping the champagne cork. But rather, samatvam yoga uchate. Yoga means to attain the state of mental equilibrium. So, this is a definition in Bhagavad Gita. Now you can see beneath that there's a similar definition, but from the via negativa, from the negative side, from Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Yogas chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the complete restraint of fluctuations of the mind. So one definition said positively, yoga is equilibrium. The other one is saying restrain the modifications, restrain the turbulence of your mind. That is called yoga. Now what's the significance of this? In these modern days, people have a model of life, of the world, as if it's just particles in motion. Or as Democritus said thousands of years ago, the same things. Atoms and the void. That's all there is. But this material explanation of reality is partly true, but it is far from complete. The physical body, of course, is made of atoms, paramanu, they're called in Sanskrit. But our psychological body is made of a very fine, subtle energy. The mind is not spiritual. The mind is also material, but it's a more subtle, fine material energy. And it tends to be in a state of oscillation. So the basic idea is that we don't see the world directly. We're not seeing the world directly. We're seeing the world through the instrument or through the prism. Actually, it could be prison also. It's a prism and a prism. Through the prism of the mind. So everyone sees the world, even though we're looking at the same world, but everyone sees it in a different way. Because they are seeing the world according to the distortion of their own psychological fluctuations. It's just like if there's a lake of water and the water is disturbed, there are ripples in the water, then if you try to see your reflection, you don't get a true, a faithful impression of your form. But if the water becomes completely calm and still, then when you look in the water, you can see yourself clearly. So the mind is like that. The person whose mind is disturbed, which is oscillating, which is fluctuating with so many emotions, sometimes euphoric, sometimes depressed, sometimes angry, sometimes attached, sometimes accepting things and later rejecting them. So that if one is seeing the world through that disturbed or fluctuating mind, you will not get a true impression of what the world is like. We cannot understand the truth of the world or the truth of ourselves. But if the mind can become very steady, then gradually some wisdom arises and we can get a clear picture of the nature of the world and also something about the nature of ourselves. Not completely, but something we can realize about ourselves. To get the complete picture will require more capacity than we have as individuals. That will require some grace, some divine intervention. But there's something we can do to move in that direction. And that is the sadhana, the practice of equilibrium. So, here, oh look, it's fluctuating. Ripples there. This is just a picture of EEG brainwaves of a person in high anxiety. So you can see what that looks like. Looks like a kind of punk rock hairstyle. So if someone is in high anxiety, then there's a lot of irregular brain activity. If someone is in medium anxiety, you can see it's less. And here's someone who's calm. It's more smooth. There's some texture there, but that's a general person in a calm state. So, in the state of trance, we want to come to that state where there's a complete equilibrium, that the fluctuations of the mind have been fully restrained. So, in the Yoga Sutras, there it is said, Tada drastu srupe vasthanam, which means that when the mind has become fully peaceful, the fluctuations have been restrained, then the seer, that means the soul, the spiritual soul, is becomes situated in his own nature. That means when we have a peaceful mind, then the goodness of the self manifests. We realize that we are not physical beings, but we are transcendental spiritual beings who are temporarily encased in a physical and psychological body. So when the mind is oscillating, when it's passionate, when the emotional disturbance is there, then what happens in the next sutra? In the next sutra is stated, Vritti Swarupyam Itaratra, which means otherwise there is identification with the fluctuations. So what does that mean? When the mind is calm, then our consciousness separates from identification with the physical body and mind. But when the mind is turbulent, then the sense of I-ness, the pure ego of the soul, becomes merged with the polluted ego of the material world. You see? So, for an ordinary person, they very strongly feel intuitively that I am this physical body, I am male, I am female, I am young, I am old, I am black or white or yellow or whatever. There's a full identification. But it's a state of ignorance. It's like a person driving down the road thinking, I am a Toyota. Right? They're not a Toyota. It's just a vehicle. And you have to change the vehicle after a few years. So, the souls are changing bodies. We're born, we grow old, we die, and the soul gets another body according to the law of karma. And again and again. So we've had many lives before. We could have many lives in the future. We're trying to solve that problem this evening. But that won't happen. So, there are two things here. When the mind is in a state of the peacefulness, then the sense of self, identification of the spirit, becomes separated from the body and mind. And when the mind is in a state of disturbance, then the two become merged together. And then, because the physical body it's perishable, it's very fragile. Life is fragile. Death can come at any moment. So when the soul, who is eternal, is identifying with the temporary body, he lives in a state of anxiety, feeling fear at any moment. The body is just like a tomato. You know, if you just drop it from a height, splat. And it's very fragile. So, for a soul who is eternal, to be identified with this foreign covering of the perishable material body is a state of anxiety. So, we want to overcome this. Now, we've spoken about the peaceful state of mind and the disturbed state of mind. But what I want to go into now is some details about the spectrum of stability. It's a spectrum, just like light has a spectrum from the infrared to ultraviolet, with all the colors of the rainbow in between. So similarly, just as light, when it goes into different part of the spectrum, takes on a different color. So similarly, our mind, when it's in different degrees of fluctuation, it goes through phase transitions into different states. So we want to look at the the main umbrella states. Okay, so the first one is called a muddha. Muddha is a state of psychological inertia, a state of dullness. Perhaps some of you are aware of the cosmology of the Vedas. Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Please raise your hand if you know these terms. Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Okay. So the Rajas means the natural energy of passion and creation, which brings things into existence. And Tamas means the energy of destruction, which is dull and inert. And Sattva is the mode of goodness. It maintains a balance. So all things in this world, they come into existence by the energy of Rajas. They remain for some time by the energy of Sattva, and then they, ashes to ashes and dust to dust, they become dissolved by the influence of Tamagun. So these three energies of nature, they're always competing with each other in our own mind. So because they're in a state of competition always, sometimes Tamas becomes in the upper position, sometimes Rajas and sometimes Sattva throughout the day. So especially at night, very late at night, then Tamagun, the mode of ignorance, rises, and it causes us to fall asleep and go into a state of deep sleep. So in the state of deep sleep, someone may say, I was unconscious. But it's not that we're unconscious, because consciousness is the quality of the soul. The soul is like the sun. The sun never goes down. The sun is always shining. Right? So the soul is always conscious. But when the covering of tamagun, the mode of ignorance, mental inertia rises, then the soul is not unconscious, but the soul is conscious of nothing. So the state of deep sleep is a state of the being conscious of nothing. So that's a state of mental inertia. Now, when you begin to wake up, then what happens? Passion becomes more prominent. And immediately, coming out of the deep sleep, coming into the dream state, now the mind is wandering, and then you wake up. And I know none of you have that terrible habit of drinking coffee in the morning. But if you do, then this is to ingest rajas, to ingest passion. As soon as someone drinks coffee, then the mind starts jumping here and there very, very quickly. So that state of mind where our focus is flitting from place to place very quickly, going from one subject to another, checking the phone, checking the computer, 15 tabs are open, eating breakfast at the same time, multitasking. This is called shipta, because the mind is very rajasic, and it's flitting from one subject to another. In that state of being always distracted by many, many different things in quick succession, it's not possible to understand our spiritual nature. So some persons, they try to be calm and have some peace of mind. And then the power of concentration comes. Some concentration. So that's the next stage. It's called vikshipta. Vikshipta means not always wandering, but occasionally fixed, and then losing that focus, and then again becoming fixed. For example, a person like a musician or a scholar, a scientist, someone who has to become really absorbed in their work to the exclusion of everything that's going on. They will come into this state, vikshipta, where they have quite a focus or concentration, but it's not held for a long time. They'll look up and look around, and then again. So it's an intermittent focus and distraction. So we're coming up out of the mode of ignorance, tamagun, to the mode of passion, and then vikshipta is there's some passion but also some goodness which allows the person to focus. Then the next state, as we rise through the spectrum of stability is called ekagra. Ekagra means one-pointed concentration. When your attention becomes like a laser, it's pointed towards one object completely without moving. So this is actually quite rare. Only those who are doing some type of sadhana, spiritual sadhana, can enter into that state of ekagra. And then finally niruddha. So niruddha means fully restrained. That is, all the fluctuations of the mind have stopped completely. So these are the 5 stages in the spectrum of psychological stability. And a person who is on any type of spiritual path, this is something common, it's universal to everyone on every spiritual path, whether you're a yogi, a jnani, a karma yogi, ashtanga yogi, whether you're a Christian or Muslim, mystic, Sufi, they're all trying to do the same thing, and that's make progress along the spectrum of stability to become free from a distorted vision of life and understand the truth. So here we're just adding the energies which are affecting them. Mudra, in the summary, comes from tamas. The wandering mind, restless mind, is rajas. Vikshipta is a mixture of goodness and passion. And then, when sattva, the mode of goodness, is very high, the state of ekagra comes. And niruddha, when the mind is completely restrained, that is called nirgun. That means no sattva, rajas or tamas at all. One has actually gone beyond the 3 energies of this material world and attained the state of liberation. Now, there are, in the state of ekagra, trance already begins. And that trance is called sampragyata samadhi. Sampragyata samadhi. Then, when one transcends the gunas completely, that state of trance is called asampragyata samadhi. So the words look a little bit complicated, but it's not really complicated. The difference between the 2 types of samadhi is that the first one, sampragyata samadhi, this samadhi means trance. This state of trance has an object. In other words, you're in trance, but your attention is focused on a particular object. Whereas asampragyata samadhi means there is no object of meditation. It is a state of just pure awareness. Now, oh, you can't see. This presentation looks really beautiful. Just, we're not getting the effect here. So, the bottom part of the screen is in a different color. It's just showing that these 2 last stages in the spectrum of stability, they are called yoga. They go by the name of yoga. Anything before that is not called yoga, according to the Yoga Sutras. There we go. And what's the reason? Why is this called yoga, but anything you do when your mind is in the other stage is not called yoga? The reason is this, that an ordinary person is always fluctuating between the state of being asleep and then being awake but distracted by many things, and then occasionally concentrating, and then again distracted and then falling asleep. So their life is moving between these 3. As long as a person is simply moving between these 3 states, then he continues to move through lifetime after lifetime in accordance with the laws of karma. And there's nothing he can do to rise up out of that. It's not until a person attains the state of ekagra that he begins to chip away at the effects of karma and make progress towards a state of spiritual liberation. So, if a person is just meditating for whatever, 5 minutes or 10 minutes, then they may be calming down and coming from the state of Kshipta to Vikshipta, but it's technically not really meditation and not really yoga until the state of Ekagra, one-pointed focus, is attained. And that's when one can begin to move and become free from the influences of past life's karma. In the Yoga Sutras it said, Shina Britti Abhijatasya Eva Mane Gihitri Grahana Grayeshu Tat Sta Tat Antadanjana Samapati. Now I want to introduce an idea. It's called Samapati. Samapati means this, that when a person attains the state of Ekagra, one-pointed focus, then the mind acquires a talent that was not available before. And that talent is called Samapati. It's an ability to meditate on something. And when you meditate upon it, that object appears within your consciousness perfectly. And you can acquire knowledge of it just through meditation. I give an example. If a yogi who has attained ekagrata, one-pointedness, meditates on the stomach chakra, then the entire intestines and all the workings of the stomach and digestion will manifest in his mind, and he will understand everything about it. So this is just an example. In other words, where in that state of ekagra, if you send your mind towards something, then that will crystallize within your consciousness and you'll understand all about it. And you can even acquire the qualities of that thing. For example, you may have heard of yoga siddhis. Yoga siddhis. Sometimes the yogis, they may levitate. Why? Because they were meditating on the element of air. And as they meditated, the actual nature of air was revealed to them in their trance. And they acquired the qualities of that. And that permeated the whole body. And they became light as air and began to float off the ground. So Patanjali describes so many different mystical powers that can be acquired by meditation. But you should know that the acquirement of this type of power is not the goal of yoga. Rather, these things are considered to be distractions. They're considered to be distractions. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a description of a great personality, Prithu Maharaj. And he was performing meditation. And all the mystic powers came to him. And he just folded his hands and he bowed down. No, I don't want any mystic powers. Why? Because it's just part of the illusion, the attraction of the illusion of this world. It's another allurement. Just like an ordinary person is allured by the prospect of money or fame or power. So in the same way, when a person takes to the spiritual path, then other types of allurements and temptations come. Yeah? If you go into the desert and fast for 40 days, then what will happen? So all types of temptations come when you start to progress in spiritual life. So we should be very careful to always keep our mind on the goal of attaining our transcendental eternal love for the Supreme Being. So now the reason we're discussing this talent that arises for the person with great concentration is by this we can begin to understand something about the different levels of samadhi or the levels of trance. So here we are, we're coming to the levels of first the levels of Sampragyata Samadhi. So when you have this samapati, this talent of being able to become engrossed in some object and acquire knowledge about it, then the first stage of samadhi is called savitarka. Savitarka. And that means that the object of your meditation is a gross physical object of this world. So let us say you're sitting in meditation and you say, go. Go is Sanskrit. You know what go means in Sanskrit? Cow. The word cow comes from the Sanskrit go. So, and you think of a cow, then your mind, your actual substance, the mind stuff itself, will begin to transform and produce the form of a cow. And you can understand everything about how they digest the grass, how they turn it into milk and so on. These miracles of nature. I'm just giving a simple example. But what happens is, when there's a concentration on that object, but there's still a little bit of interference, then the picture does not crystallize completely clearly, but rather the experience is mixed with some of your own preconceived ideas. That's called vikalpa. Vikalpa means conceptions which are non-correlated thought constructs. A conception which doesn't exactly correlate with an objective external truth. So that is called vikalpa, the non-correlated thought construct. We have so many ideas in the mind that later we may find out they're not true at all. So they're called vikalpas. So at first, when the person is meditating on a particular object, the object begins to manifest, but it's a bit fuzzy. It's not clear yet because it's still mixed with the impressions of previous experience. So that is called savitarka. Savitarka. Vitarka means is it like this or is it like that? You're a little bit undecided. And then just as, let's say with this projector, everything was fuzzy and then we just adjusted the focuser and it became very clear. So similarly, as the concentration goes deeper, then the vagueness of the experience of the object evaporates and there's a full crystal clear picture. So there's no doubt, there's no vitarka anymore, there's no conjecture. Is it like this or is it like that? So that is called nirvitarka samadhi. Nirvitarka. Without any conjecture, you have a clear experience. So these are the first two types of sampragyata samadhi. Savitarka sampragyata samadhi, little vague, and then nirvitarka sampragyata samadhi, where you have a very clear understanding of the object of your meditation. Now, the next levels of samadhi, savichar and nirvichar. It's a similar thing. The difference here is the object of meditation is not a gross object of this world, but rather the physical elements that we experience in this world: earth, fire, water, air, and space. And the air, fire, water, air, and space, there are 5 mahabhuts, the 5 gross elements. They have their subtle causes. What's behind them? What's the software behind them? So the subtle elements from which the gross elements develop, they're called tanmatras. So when the yogi's meditation goes deeper, he can penetrate any object, go through the superficial understanding of the elements into the subtle causes of those elements. And so when the object of meditation is penetrating like an X-ray through the superficial forms of things to their subtle causes, then we come to the next stage. So just as in the first stage, at first it's not fully clear, so it's called savichar. Savichar. Vichar means deliberation. You can see the subtle causes, but there's still a little deliberation. Oh, what is it like? Caused by previous the impressions, preconceived notions from before. So when that clears and that meditation comes fully into focus, then it's called nirvichar sampragyata samadhi. So now let's go deeper into trance. The next level of trance is called sananda sampragyata samadhi. Sananda. Sananda means with joy. Now, what is this? We have a physical body. And this physical body has senses. And these senses are experiencing the gross physical world. Now the yogi, by his meditation, comes to understand everything about the gross physical world. Then he comes to understand everything about the subtle causes of that world. And now his consciousness goes away from the gross and subtle sensory experience and turns onto the mechanisms of perception themselves, the senses. See, an ordinary person is, his senses are seeing the world and he's identifying with the senses. But now in the next stage of trance, the soul of the yogi is not looking at the world through the senses, but he's looking at the actual internal mechanisms of the senses themselves. So that brings a state of great joy. A state of great joy. According to Vedanta, the soul is a particle, an atom of spirit situated in the heart chakra. And just as a king sits upon a throne and he's telling his subjects what to do, so in the same way, the soul is sitting on the throne of the heart chakra, and there are 5 atoms around him, and those 5 atoms are the original forms of the senses. And the soul, by his will, draws those atomic senses towards himself. Now the powers of the senses are carried by pran through the nadis of the body, and so the power of touch spreads out from the touch atom all over the body by the power of pran. If you squeeze your hand and stop the pran from going there, then what will happen? You can't feel anything in your fingers. You see? So the original form of the senses, they're atoms surrounding the soul, and their powers are spread out throughout the body. They're carried on the currents of pran. So an ordinary person just identifies with their senses. If you ask someone, oh, please write your autobiography, they won't write anything about the soul. They'll just write about what their senses did. When I was 10 years old, my senses did this. When I was 30 years old, my senses did that. So ordinary person is identifying with the senses without understanding what they are. But in the state of trance, one penetrates through the superficial appearance of the world, through the subtle appearance of the world, and into the very mechanisms of the senses by which we experience the world. And then the next level of samadhi is called sasmita. This means that the psychological body is called chitta. It is very fine psychological energy. And the soul is seeing everything through that chitta. Our experiences actually come about by transformations of chitta. Consider this. If a person has a fever, I've experienced this. If you live in India for many years, you'll experience the joys of typhoid and malaria after some time. So if you have a fever of about 104 degrees and you're about to die, at that time, all the pran and the chitta are disturbed, and you look and you start to hallucinate. Also, persons, I know you have never done this, but some persons who have taken drugs, then they also experience hallucinations because the chemicals are interfering with the functions of the mind the chitta and the prana. And so just see how strange it is that even though to us the world looks out there, that we're seeing the world out there, and it's objective for all of us. But if a person's prana and chitta are disturbed, they experience that whatever, the walls are breathing, or the trees are dancing, or whatever, Lucy in the sky with diamonds, whatever they experience. So why is that? How can your mind affect the way the world is? It's not affecting the way the world is, but rather we don't see the world directly. We see a facsimile of the world which is made by our chitta. When the senses contact an object, then they relay that object to the psychological body. The psychological body transforms and makes a model, and then the soul is looking at that model. It's a little bit like, let's say, if you have a camera. What happens? If you point the camera at something, then the pixels on the screen transform and make a picture of what's in front of the camera. And then the photographer is looking at that. So it's a bit like that with all of us. I'm not saying the external world doesn't exist. We're not going into solipsism. The external world exists, but we're not seeing it directly. We see a facsimile or a model of the outer world, which is made by our own psychological functions, by the transformations of chitta. So when a person goes into samadhi, into trance, then their chitta has become steady, so it's not transforming anymore and giving them outer impressions of the outer world. Perhaps you know, in the Astanga yoga system, after yam and niyam and asana and pranayama, what's the next stage? Raise your hand. Do you know the next stage? Yam and niyam, there's some rules and regulations. Then asanas, the sitting postures. And then pranayama. Yes, then the next stage is pratyahara, exactly. Pratyahara means the withdrawal of the sensory powers. That the powers of the senses which are carried out by prana into the world have been withdrawn into themselves. And so then after pratyahara you can go into the state of, what's the next one? After pratyahara. Do you remember? Dharana, concentration. So we're discussing ekagrata, one-pointedness. We're already discussing that stage of dharana, concentration. And after concentration comes dhyan. And then the full samadhi. So when the senses are withdrawn from the external world and the person is in trance, because the senses are withdrawn, even if someone will take a gun and fire the gun by their ear, I mean, not pointing at them, but bang, right by, they will not hear it. Why? Because the powers of the senses are being withdrawn within. Yada samharate chayam kurmangani vasavasha. Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita, the person in trance is like a tortoise. Just as a tortoise can withdraw his arms and legs and head and everything inside the shell. So similarly, the person in trance has withdrawn all their sensory powers within. Indriyan indriyapetas tasya pragya pratishtita. And he becomes fixed in trance when all the senses are withdrawn. So, once the senses are withdrawn, then the chitta, the psychological body, is no longer transforming into the facsimile or the model of external things. It becomes completely steady. And when it's steady, it's like a mirror. Just like a mirror, it's very clean and very smooth. So if you put your face before a mirror, you can see your reflection. So in the same way, when a person comes to this state, sasmita, now reflected in his chitta, he can see the nature of Atma, the soul. He gets Atma Gyan, knowledge of the soul. So, then in the Astanga Yoga system of Patanjali, he goes one stage further and gives up the sense of asmita, means I-ness. He gives up the sense of I-ness completely and attains nirvana, moksha or mukti, impersonal liberation, emerging into a oneness, an eternal, unchanging light. So, we don't want to do that actually. We've discussed here how many stages of samadhi trance? Savitak, Nivartak, Savicha, Nivarcha, Sananda, Sasmit. That's 6. Plus Nirodha, 7. So what I want to discuss this evening is the 8th option. The 8th option of trance. And that is the samadhi of bhakti yoga. The samadhi of devotion. This is far superior to the trance by which one experiences the dissolution of the personality and the individuality completely. It's not very clear here, but that's a painting of Vyas. Who's ever heard of Vyas? Vyasadeva. So Vyasadeva, he's famous as the compiler of the Vedas. We don't exactly say the author of the Vedas, because it's considered that the Vedas are eternal, that Vyas was in a trance, and he basically downloaded the eternal Vedas in his trance and then had them written down. He dictated them to his secretary. Do you know the secretary of Vyas? Ganesh. Yeah? No? Do you know Ganesh? Yeah. So Ganesh is the secretary of Vyas. He lives, there's a cave, if you go to the Himalayas, if you go up to Haridwar, and then you keep going from Haridwar, you go up to Rishikesh, and then from Rishikesh you keep going up to Deva Prayag and Rudra Prayag, Nanda Prayag. Gradually you'll come to Badrinath. So then from Badrinath, then you can go a few kilometers further up, you come to a village called Mana, and then that's it. No vehicle, no four-wheel drive Jeep can go further than that. Then you have to go on foot the rest of the way. So then you keep climbing up the mountain, and you come to the place, the Vyasa Guf, the cave of Vyas, on the bank of the Saraswati River in the Himalayan mountains, that is called Keshav Prayag. And just next to the cave of Vyas is the cave of Ganesh, and that's the place where Vyas, he was in trance and he was downloading the knowledge of the Vedas and dictating it to Ganesh. So wonderful. Has anyone been there? Yeah. So Vyasadeva is famous because he, in his trance, dictated the Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajurveda, Atharva Veda, the 4 Vedas. After that, he also dictated the Upanishads, the Puranas, and the Mahabharata. Do you have any fans of the Mahabharata? Yeah. Yeah. In India, in the 80s, some great devotee, they made a series, a television series of the Mahabharata. It's kind of old and a bit cheesy in terms of the technology, but it's very well done. And in those days, once a week, when the Mahabharata was shown on TV, the entire country came to a standstill. Because there were no video recorders or anything, no internet or anything that day. So when it was on, that was the only chance you had to see it. The entire India just stopped once a week. All the streets were empty, except for sometimes in the tea shops there'd be a television and there'd be 100 people all standing in the street watching. So the whole India stopped to watch this. So the Mahabharata is the great epic of Vyasadeva. 100,000 verses of Sanskrit describing the history of the ancient kings of India. And in the midst of that Mahabharata comes 18 chapters of that Mahabharata are also taken separately, and that's called the Bhagavad Gita. So Vyasadeva gave the Bhagavad Gita as well. He also gave Vedanta Sutra, which is considered to be the cream of metaphysics, Indian philosophy, in which there's an examination of all the classical schools of philosophy, such as Nyaya, the school of logic, Vaisheshik, the Vedic atomic theory, and Sankhya, and of course the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. So there's an analysis of all of these schools in Vedanta Sutra, and then the final conclusion, collecting all the strengths of each philosophy and rejecting whatever is lacking or their weaknesses. And then the final metaphysical conclusion is given in Vedanta. So that's the most respected respected philosophical school in ancient India. So Vyas, he compiled all of these texts, which even till today, thousands of years later, they're most respected and studied all over the world. But we find that even after doing all of this, Vyas was not satisfied. He was not fully satisfied. And one day, he woke up very early in the morning before sunrise and he took bath in the Saraswati River, and then he sat in meditation on the bank of the river very high there in the Himalayas, and he was thinking, I have compiled so many instructions about meditation and philosophy, but my heart is not satisfied. There's something missing. What is it? I don't know what it is. And just then, he heard a sound, the sound of a veena playing. And it was his guru, the great sage Narada Muni, playing on his veena. He arrived there. And he saw Vyasadeva, and he could read the mind of his disciple. And he said, oh, Vyas, are you satisfied? You can think. Put yourself in the shoes of Vyas. Maybe you've been practicing some spiritual practice for many years, but feeling there's something missing. So, you're not alone. It's not new. Even Vyas, the compiler of the Vedas, was feeling in the same way. There's something missing. So then Vyas, he said to his Gurudev, Tvam pariyatam arka ivati lokim antascharo vayo ivatma shakshi paravare brahmano dharmato bratai snatasya nunam alam vichaksha. Snatasya nunam me alam vichaksha. He folded his hands and he prayed to his guru, his spiritual master. Oh Gurudev, just as the sun travels everywhere through space and sees everything, so you also see everything on the outside. And just as the pran, the air, moves internally within inside everyone, so you also see everything on the inside. This is actually the qualification of a guru. Oh Gurudev, you see everything outwardly and you see everything inwardly. So I admit to you, though I have been engaged in austerities, penance, tapasya, austerity, renunciation, and I have performed so many sacrifices and so many types of meditation, but I feel that in me there's something missing. Please tell me what it is. So then Narad, he said to his disciple, Vyas, Bhavatana prayam yasho bhagavato malam yenevaso natusheta manyetad darshanam kilam. He said, I think that your darshan, that means your vision is not complete. There's something missing from your vision. Why? Because you have not described the beautiful pastimes of the Supreme Being. You've described how people can meditate, they can get peace, how they can get liberation even. You've described God as Ishvara. Ishvara means the controller of time and space, the creator, maintainer and destroyer of the world. You've described Vishnu. You've described Paramatma. But that is not the end of the story. If we only think about the Supreme Conscious Being as the creator, the maintainer and the destroyer of the cosmos, then this is actually egocentric conception. It's egocentric. Why? Because of course, this is my cosmos. I'm living in this cosmos. I am the central hero in this drama, and God is just the judge in the sky giving out the parking tickets for people who do wrong things. Huh? Is that what God is like? God is just the controller and the judge? Is that what he does all day? Looking down on us, saying what? Eating some ice cream, and what are you doing? Watching TV. Yeah? Is that what God is? Is that the totality of the highest truth? That God is just the Paramatma, the creator of the world, that we take to be our playground, and giving karma, giving the pain to those who do evil things, and giving some happiness and success to those who are pious, and show kindness to others. Just the waves of karma going on. He's just orchestrating that. No. To become free from an egocentric conception of the Supreme Being, we have to know that Supreme Conscious Being has his own world. He has his own dimension, which is not full of suffering and difficulties, and not temporary, but an eternal, beautiful realm, which is perfect. And there, that Supreme Being is engaged in loving play with all of his angels, all of his dear ones, where the individual is not the center, but he is the center of love for everyone. So the Guru of Vyasadeva told him, your vision is limited, now you have to expand your vision. So I'll give you a mantra. And his Guru gave him a mantra and told him, meditate on this mantra, and this mantra will transport you beyond the limitations of your mind, and beyond this material world, and even beyond liberation. You'll be liberated from liberation. Because mukti, nirvana, moksha, to enter into light, is that emptiness is an extreme restriction. There's no love, there's no color, there's no music, there's no art. But we should know that all of these beautiful things which are here in this world have their origin in the divine realm. Even Plato has given that conclusion in his analogy of the cave, that the varieties of this world are the shadows of their eternal forms in perfection. So it would be an anticlimax if after thousands and millions of lifetimes wandering through this world, a person finally becomes detached from everything and then becomes liberated and boop, enters into the void. Game over. That's an anticlimax. No. We want relationships. We want love. We want music and dance and art and all of these beautiful things. But these things ultimately become painful in this world because everything is temporary. If you love someone, after some time, then death comes. And everything is lost. But it doesn't mean that those things in there as universals, as principles, should be rejected. But only their material reflection should be overcome. And we can enter into the variegated beauty of the divine realm, where the Supreme Being's own world. So Narad Muni told this to his disciple Vyasadeva and said, I'll give you a mantra. By this mantra you should go into trance, and I am blessing you that you will realize that place is called Golok Vrindavan. So then Vyas, he went into trance. Don't want to get ahead of myself. He went into trance. Bhakti yogena manasi samyak pranihite male apasyam purusham purnam mayam cha tad apashrayam. Wonderful. He began to repeat the mantra given by Guru. What does mantra mean? Mana natrayate yasmad tasman mantra parikirtita. Man means mind. And tra, from tra, the English cognate is transport. Trans means to go across, transport. So from this has come from the Sanskrit tra. That which transports you, which delivers you from one place to another. That takes you beyond the limitations of the mind. Mantra, which delivers you, that transports you beyond the limitations of the mind, is called mantra. So his guru gave him mantra, and he began to repeat that mantra, and when samyak pranihimate, he went into samadhi, into trance, and he saw apasat purusham purnam mayam chatar pasrayam. He had a vision. He could see the entire material creation, millions and millions of universes, and they are called a maya, the illusory energy of God. That's where we are now, in one of those millions of temporary universes. And on the other side, he saw the spiritual world, and he saw the Supreme Being playing like a boy, running barefoot in the forest, with a feather in his hair, playing on a flute. So charming and attractive. When he smiles, oh, everyone's heart melts. When he plays his flute, even the trees shiver in ecstasy. And because he's so attractive, because his beauty attracts all moving and non-moving living entities with spontaneous love. So his name is Krishna. Krishna. Krishna means attractive, and Na means Ananda, joy. The Supreme Being, who is the embodiment of all beauty and joy, his name is Krishna. We have, if you look in the Oxford Dictionary, there's a word in the Oxford Dictionary, and the explanation of the word, the definition of the word is impelling beauty that inspires devotion. Which word in the Oxford Dictionary is defined as impelling beauty that inspires devotion? Think. The word in English that is defined as impelling beauty that inspires devotion is the word charisma. Charisma. It comes from Krishna. It's actually, the meaning is exactly the same. So he saw that beautiful realm, and he also saw the souls like us. Though he saw the external material illusory energy, and he saw the eternal pure spiritual energy, but he saw us, the souls. We were in between. That's called tatastha, the marginal energy. And some souls, their attention was turned this way to illusion, and some were turned towards the spiritual world. So this is our nature, that we can choose to focus either in the temporary material world, or by mantra and by bhakti yoga we can turn our attention internally to the spiritual world and to the service of the Supreme Being. So Srila Vyasadeva, seeing this, then from his trance he wrote his final Vedic literature, and that is called the Bhagavad Purana. The Bhagavad Purana is or Srimad Bhagavatam, it's also called Srimad Bhagavatam. The Bhagavad Purana is the final contribution of Srila Vyasadeva in his maturity, in which he gives the ultimate knowledge. And that ultimate knowledge is devotion to Krishna. And one who has attained that devotion and that vision is fully enlightened. So that was our subject for this evening, meditation and enlightenment. We've tried to discuss all the stages step by step. Should I go on? Yeah? Yes. Yeah, a little bit more? Okay. I just want to add one more thing about mantra. What is mantra? How does it work? It's a great science. If a person has a guru, an enlightened guru, they can understand everything scientifically, not emotionally, sentimentally, but very clearly and precisely. We can look here, you can just about see it. The sun went down to help us. Thank you. So, here you can see this diagram is showing someone sitting in meditation, and you can see the main arteries of the pranic system. Pran is moving around within the body and also within the mind. In fact, whatever movement takes place anywhere in the universe is done by pran. Pran is the Kriya Shakti. That means the power of motion. And so even on a molecular level, the entire organizational principle of the body, even on a molecular level, is done by pran. And therefore, if let's say a person is not very healthy, just by doing pranayama, they can heal themselves. Because their pran was out of balance, and so they became ill. And by practicing pranayama, their pran became in balance, and then their whole body became reorganized. It was in a state of disorder, and it became back to a state of order when the pran was moving naturally and with less influence of rajas and tamas, the energies of destruction and passion. So here you can see that the main nadi, or the main pranic channel, it goes from the Mooladhara chakra up to the Sahasrara chakra, right up the spine, and that nadi, that channel is called Shushumna nadi. Shushumna nadi. That's why if you meditate, you should sit up straight. If you're all like leaning on one side or hunched over like this, then the pran will not move well, and you'll tend to sleep. So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes one should sit up with the body, head, and neck erect in a straight line. Now, the next main pranic channels on the left, starting from the bottom and coming out on the left side, is the Ida, and it goes around and it goes like a snake, like in a zigzag way through each of the chakras like that. So on the left side, that is Ida, that is considered the moon side, that's the female aspect of the energy. And then on the right side is the sun side, that is a Pingala. And it comes from the right side of the Mooladhara chakra and then winds around like that and comes to the top. So, you see, there's a tradition in Ayurveda, after eating, you take a little rest, but you lie down on the left side. Why? If you lie on the left side, it closes the cooling moon aspect of the pran, because you need the heating aspect for digestion. That's why you lie on the left side. Now, our pran is generally, for most people, it's moving more in Pingala or more in Ida. It's generally not moving in the Sushumna Nadi. And you can check. Everyone check now. Just cover your right nostril, close your, and breathe through your left nostril. Now cover your left nostril and breathe through the right. Now, did you notice that one side was more open than the other? You did? Yeah. Whose left side was more open than the other? Yeah? Whose right side was more open than the other? Okay. So about every 90 minutes, the pran is moving more to one side and then more to the changes side about every 90 minutes for general persons. By doing the anulom and pratilom, the breathing, then you can keep the pran in the Sushumna Nadi, in the center. So, if it's more in your right side, then you're generally more alert and more, it's the Rajasic side. The sun side is the Rajasic side. And then when it moves to the left side, if the left side is more open, it means a more tamasic or a mental inertia is coming. You know, do you ever have the experience when you're doing something and then you put down your keys or something and then afterwards you can't find, where did I put them? Yeah? It's because at that moment you weren't paying attention, and you weren't paying attention because there was some mental inertia because the pran was moved on the left side, you see? So, Now, the pran, if the yogis, they bring the pran into the center, into the Shumna Nadi by pranayama, and that is the sattvic. If there's the pran is in the center, then you have mental equilibrium because of sattva gun, the energy of balance. And this is the reason why the yogis do pranayama, to stop this movement. Now, one is the sun side and one is the moon side. It is like the movements of time. You know, the sun rises, then the moon rises, the sun rises, then the moon rises. The more our prana is moving from side to side, the more we're affected by time. You see? So a person who is in rajas and tamas and has an erratic life, they'll age very quickly. But if a person is very sattvic, then even they may be very old, but they look very young, because they don't have the destructive and passionate energies in their life. The energy of maintenance is there, so they're very shining and they stay looking very young. I'm 84. So the yogis, by pranayama, they are trying to elevate their consciousness and attain mental equilibrium by a mechanical process. By manipulating the prana in the body, they're trying to come to sattva gun, and in this way elevate their consciousness, control their mind, and go into trance. Now, I want to discuss an alternative way, a more powerful way to attain the state of trance, even without pranayama. If you want to do some pranayama for your health, that's fine. But as a spiritual path, it takes many, many years. It's extremely difficult. You practically have to leave everything and live in a cave alone in the Himalayas for 100 years, and maybe you'll be successful. It's very difficult. But if you want to attain the state of trance in the most powerful and effective way, this is the recommended way. Now here you can see we've just given the names of the chakras, from the Muladhara chakra up to the Sahasrara chakra. So now I want to speak about sound. So sound begins with a movement of pran in the Muladhara chakra. Let's say you want to speak, you want to say something. Just a moment before you speak, there's a movement of pran in the Muladhara chakra. And that's caused by your desire. You want to say something. You're about to speak. And that causes the pran to move in the Muladhara chakra. And then it rises, the pran rises up the Sushumna Nadi, and then it comes to the Manipura chakra. So the first level of sound, in that sound in its most rudimentary form, is called para. And it's on the level of pran. This is all explained. Also, Srila Vyasadeva described this in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 11th canto and also the 12th canto, the last two cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. So the first level of sound is just a movement of pran on the level of the Muladhara chakra, and that sound is called para shabda. Then it rises up, and the sound enters the mental level. Then it's called pasyanti. Pasyanti indicates seeing. In other words, in your mind, you see what you want to say. Let's say you want to say something about your mother. So first you want to speak, and the picture of your mother comes in your mind. And now, how are you going to articulate that? So then the pran rises up to the Anahata chakra, and the sound comes to the level of buddhi. On the level of buddhi, the intention of what you want to express becomes divided into the syntax of language. You know, when you speak, you have the subject of the sentence, you have the object of the sentence, you have the verb, the adjectives, the adverbs. So from the mind, the desire to express something and the vision of what you want to say, the sound rises up to the intellectual platform in the Anahata chakra, buddhi. That's called madhyama, where it is diffracted into the various parts of language. in the form of the syntax of what you want to say. And then the pran rises up and comes to the Vishuddhi chakra. So the Vishuddhi chakra is here in the throat. And so that level of sound is called Vaikari sound. And that is on the level of the actual indriya, what that means, the sense of speech. So as the sound rises up to here, then the throat and the tongue and the teeth, they block the flow of air. And depending on the way that the air is blocked, it produces different syllables. A, I, u, u. Ri, 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 e, I, o, a, Kachatatapa, kachatatapa, gajadadapa, gajadadapa, gajananama, yaralavasa, shashasaha, ha. Like this. 56 sounds are produced. It's just air coming up, but it's being blocked by different parts of your mouth. Like all the guttural sounds, like ka, ka, ga, ga, come from the back of the throat. Ka, ka, ga, ga. And so then the sound comes out, and then that's speech. So this is the nature of sound. It goes from the level of pran to mind, intelligence, and then the part that you can hear. There are 4 levels of sound. And this is true for everyone, all the time. So you've been speaking your whole life. Now you know how it works. Congratulations. Now, what is mantra? Mantra is not a material sound. We are discussing the manifestation of material sound. But Sri Krishna, the avatar of Sri Krishna, came to this world and he gave himself, being a non-dual being, he gave himself in the form of sound. In the beginning was the Word. It means God, and the Word was God and was with God. So sound, God has his Shabda avatar, sound incarnation, and that is mantra. And it was spoken by Krishna to Vyas, to Brahma, Narad, Vyas, and it comes down in Guru Parampara through the chain of spiritual masters. So when we receive a mantra from a guru in a direct line, going back to Krishna himself, then this mantra is not material sound. In the Padma Purana it said, Sampradaya Vahina se mantraste nishvalamata. If you receive a mantra from a video, a YouTube video, or from a mail order course or anything like this, or even from a guru or a teacher, but who is not in a parampara, in a tradition, going back to the source, then that mantra will not produce fruit. But if we approach an authentic guru, in authentic tradition, when guru gives a mantra in the ear, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and other mantras also, then that is a transcendental sound vibration. And when you begin to repeat it, at first you cannot reproduce that sound. First it's not coming. But by practicing, by sitting every day and taking a rosary, a mala, sitting with the rosary every day to keep count, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. Although at first it may be a material vibration, but gradually our mind becomes attuned, our desires become attuned with the desire to serve the Supreme Lord. And then that mantra given by Guru begins to manifest in the pran, and it rises up and takes control of the mind. Because the mind was restless, moving here and there. But now, not ordinary pran, but aprakrita pran. The holy name or the mantra is not a movement of material pran. The mantra, Hare Krishna mantra, is called aprakrita pran, supernatural pran, non-different from the Supreme Being himself. So that supernatural pran enters into our pran and basically co-opts it. Our pran becomes hijacked by the spiritual energy, and it rises, and then the mind, which was very difficult to control, now becomes controlled by spiritual energy. And the intelligence that was speculating and confused about so many things becomes controlled by the spiritual energy. And then it rises up to the Vaikaya level and comes out of the mouth in the form of Hare Krishna, the mantra that you can hear. Then from the mouth it goes into the ear. And from the ear it goes back and controls the intelligence and the mind also. So when you're chanting the mantra and simultaneously hearing the mantra from both directions, your psychological body, which is extremely difficult to control, becomes co-opted, it becomes hijacked, it becomes possessed, it becomes under the grip of the spiritual mantra. And therefore, the mind very quickly goes into a state of trance. And then, remember before we were describing how the modifications of the psychological body produce our perceptions of the physical world. So once the chitta has become, the psychological body has become steadied by the mantra, and then completely infused with the power of the mantra, now reflected in that chitta is the perception of the spiritual world. So, understand? So the chitta, which is under the control of the material pran, gives you the vision of the pictures of the external world. And when the pran becomes controlled by the spiritual energy, by the appearance of mantra, that is by Shabda avatar, the sound incarnation of God in the form of the mantra, then it provides us with the spiritual perception of the transcendental world. So here, it's the Srila Vyasadeva, he realized, and in Bhagavatam, in his final contribution, he said, Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yad jnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabhyate. The meaning is that spiritual realization comes in 3 stages. So the first stage is called Brahman, just light. And that is a realization of Chit, non-dual consciousness. And then when one goes further, like the yogis can realize Paramatma, that is Vishnu in the heart, the aspect of God who is the witness and the orchestrator of the material universes. So that is a realization coming from Sat and Chit. So there is not only awareness, but Sat means existence, variegated existence. And then when one goes further, then, this is not so clear here, Radha and Krishna, the forms of Krishna in the spiritual world, that is the perception caused not by Chit, only consciousness, not by Sat and Chit, variegated existence and consciousness, but Satchid Ananda, eternal existence, consciousness, and Ananda, joy, the joy of love, the realm of love. So Srila Vyasadeva, he wasn't fully satisfied because he had not glorified that realm. And he glorified that realm in his final contribution, the Bhagavad Purana. Now just to conclude today, the Vedas say, Krishna Vanam Tusha Krishnam Sangopangasta Parshadam Vyagyai Sankirtana Praya Yajanti Hi Sumedasa, which means that in every yuga, in every age, every great astrological aeon, there's an avatar of God who appears in this world, like Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Narsingha, Lord Ram, and so on. So in this Kali Yuga, in the 15th century, there was an avatar of Krishna called Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this avatar is very special because he's an avatar of Krishna who says, he does not say, I am Krishna. He just says, I'm a devotee. Because it's Krishna just teaching us how to be a devotee by his own example. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gave the teaching of how to chant mantra, because there are many persons and they've been chanting mantra for many years. But the question comes, how do we go beyond just uttering the external material syllables and come to that stage where there's actually avatar, a descent of aprakrita pran, supernatural pran, enters and possesses our pran and begins to reveal to us a higher reality. How can we attain that stage? So Sri Chaitanya, he gave instructions, very simple and powerful and practical instructions in this regard. Ki rupa loila nam prema upajoy tara lakshan shlok shuno swarupramaray. He told to his intimate disciples, please listen to me now. I will instruct you how you can chant mantra in such a way that you become overwhelmed with divine love. How is that? Uttamaya apanake manitranadam tu prakari sahishnata kare brikshasam. He said that a saint is such a person, even though they're the most elevated of all people in this world, they always consider themselves to be the lowest. They consider themselves to be more insignificant than a blade of grass or a dry straw. See, this is the problem. A person cannot chant mantra with pride. If we are proud and praying, meditating, I am meditating, I'm great, I'm wealthy, I'm educated, all of these things, all these components of the ego, then a result will not come. So first, he said, consider yourself to be more insignificant than a blade of grass. There are millions of blades of grass out there in the field. No one's jumping up and saying, look at me. Check out my Instagram. No, they're not clamoring for attention or validation from anyone. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, be more humble than grass. How can you be more humble than grass? You see, the grass has some ego. He thinks, I might not be much, but I am a blade of grass. He's still identifying with being the grass. So to be more humble means we have to let go and relinquish all bodily and mental identification. No. Jiver Swarupoi Krishna Nityadas. I am nothing of this world. I'm a spiritual being. I am the eternal servant of Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, and the person who wants to chant this mantra and attain mantra siddhi, perfection in chanting, he should tolerate everything in two ways, just like a tree. Briksha yena kotileya kechuna balai, sukai magiyatare panina magai. There are so many trees. When you see a tree, you can bow down to the tree and say, oh, I accept you as my guru. You can also have a tree as your guru. You have to have a real guru as well. Yeah? But in addition to your own living guru in this world, you can learn something from the tree. What is that? The tree is very tolerant. Brikshayena katileya kichanebulai means if someone will come and cut the tree, they'll take the flowers, they'll take the fruit, they'll take the leaves, they'll take the branch, or even cut down the whole tree. The tree will not complain. This is very important. Don't complain. We have to stop complaining in life. It has to stop. As long as we're complaining, we're in ignorance. Why? Because everything that happens is orchestrated by God for our benefit, whether we know it or not. But if we're complaining, then we'll definitely not know that whatever situation we're in is for our benefit. You know, God is perfect. His creation is perfect. And everything is manifested for our benefit. Even the difficulties in life, they're actually blessings in disguise. We'll understand that one day. So first step, stop complaining. Don't complain about anything. Just like a tree, someone's cutting the tree, but it's inside. Then the next thing, even if it's very hot and the tree is becoming dry, and someone is walking by with some water, the tree will not say, hey, you, over there, come here, give me some water. He will not ask for anything. So don't ask. Don't bother anyone. Don't give them any stress or problems. Or outsource any responsibilities to others. Take responsibility for everything yourself. What you need in your life, God will send it. Have faith. So that's the first way to tolerate. Then the second way to tolerate. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said, Jaye magai bhiksha deya apandan, Karma Brakshi Sayane Kare Rakshan. The meaning is that the tree, if someone wants something from the tree gives. So if someone needs something from you, just give it. Be generous. A person who is generous, you shouldn't think like this because you shouldn't be attached to the result. But a generous person who gives to others, it comes back thousands of times. If you give in charity to a worthy person, it will come back in this life or the next life. So don't be avaricious, miserly. Be generous, like a tree. And Garma Brishti Sahyane Kare Rakshan means if it's a very hot day and the tree is burning in the sun, but what is the tree doing? Giving shade to others. The tree gives shade even though the sun is burning hot. So in the same way, in our life, we have to stop being preoccupied with our own difficulty, our own suffering, and be concerned about helping others. Uttam haya Vaishnav habe nirabhiman jive saman Krishna jane jive saman Krishna abhishta. Jive saman deve jane Krishna avastan. The meaning is that the saint has no ego, no pride, no arrogance. And he gives respect to everyone. Why? Because in the heart of everyone, there is Atma, the soul, but also Paramatma, the supreme soul. Atma and Paramatma, the soul and God is present in the heart of everyone. So if we disrespect others, if we criticize others, if we try to place ourselves above others, then we will not be able to see the presence of God in others. So one should be free from arrogance and pride and give respect to everyone. This is a great miracle because we always say, oh, I'm not the body. No, we're not the body. So if you're not the body, who is? Whose body is it? It's Paramatma's. Everybody's body is Paramatma's body. It's God's body. The soul is just there, like a passenger, along for the ride. But every form is God's form. He's present in everything. And the souls are just there along for the ride and identifying. That's the big reveal that comes from humility. When the darkness is dispelled and the light of spiritual knowledge fills the eyes. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu described this. If a person will be more humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, give respect to everyone without demanding respect for oneself, then when we chant, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. Then the aprakrita pran, supernatural pran will enter us. The avatar, the descent of the Supreme Lord in his Shabda, sound incarnation will enter us and take over our pran, control the mind. All the benefits of pranayama and Ashtanga Yoga will come automatically without even doing anything. And one will go into samadhi, and in that state, one will have perception of the beautiful, variegated spiritual world. So this chanting of the divine mantra, it can be done quietly, alone, by oneself, with a rosary. I think, Prem, do you have some rosaries here? If you wanted to take a rosary on your way out, you can take a rosary. And you can also meditate with this mantra congregationally with others through music and singing. Because the spiritual world is not like a library. Spiritual world is full of music. In the Vedas it said, Kathaganam natyam gamanam yavangsi priyasaki. The Supreme Lord himself is a musician, he plays on a flute. And there every step is a dance and every word is a song. So beautiful. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu encouraged everyone to, this is an ancient painting. Fancy, it's actually quite good. It's an ancient painting from India of the Sankirtan, the dancing of all the saints together as they sing the mantra, expressing emotions in various different ragas. So, this is my ashram in India, and there you can see us doing more or less, look, it's the same thing. Big, very loud and melodic devotional kirtan is most powerful to control the mind, because the mind is very tricky. It's always trying to get us involved in a conflict with someone, or entangled in some attachments and desires. But the loud congregational chanting washes away all this contamination and brings us into a very pure spiritual state. And because the spiritual world is variegated, so bhakti, the path of bhakti yoga, is not a path of isolation or just withdrawing the senses from the world, but rather all the senses can be engaged in the world to express devotion. So bhakti is expressed in so many ways through all the various arts. So you can see here's a temple where devotion is expressed through architecture. Devotion can be expressed through the culinary arts as well. So just now we'll sing one more kirtan and we'll complete the program, and we invite everyone. We'll have a beautiful vegetarian feast. And so you can taste the preparations that have been cooked very artistically with love and offered by mantra to Sri Krishna. And then even our daily habit of eating. Every day we have to eat. But in Bhakti Yoga, we learn how to spiritualize the eating process also. That eating becomes a meditation. Because in the Chandogya Upanishad, it is said, Ahara Shuddhau Sattva Shuddhi, Sattva Shuddhau Dhruva Smriti, Smriti Lambe, Sarva Grantinam Bi Pramokshaha. The meaning is, if our food is pure, that means it's prepared with vegetarian food, not tamasic and rajasic food, but sattvic food, prepared with meditation offered to God. If our food is pure, then our mind becomes pure. When our mind becomes pure, our meditation becomes pure. And when our meditation becomes pure, all the knots of ego become untied, and the soul is liberated from material experience. So the culinary arts are also very important in bhakti. Then there is also the ritual worship in the temple, also very artistic. These are our deities of Radha Krishna. Also, the bhakti is expressed through dance as well. Now, this is Odissi dance, illustrating the poetry of the love of Radha Krishna from the great poet Jayadev Goswami, his Gita Govinda. And also through painting. This is a painting very famous painting by one of my god sisters, illustrating different aspects of the pastimes of Krishna. So this is the speciality of the path of Bhakti Yoga, that it's not about suppressing the senses, suppressing our activities. Because that's the challenge on the path of Astanga Yoga. You're trying to withdraw the senses and stop the activities to go into trance. Whereas on the path of Bhakti Yoga, what we do is we take the senses away from karma, the karmic activities of this world, and engage the senses in transcendental, divine, devotional activities. So it's a much more natural path, because repression can often cause a rebound. That when we try to repress a desire, it actually grows. It's like trying to repress a sneeze. If you feel a sneeze coming and you're in a public place and you want to try to stop it, but then finally the sneeze comes out and almost your head explodes. Like that. So repressing desires doesn't work. It makes things worse. And that's why many persons on the path of yoga, they end up actually falling from the path after struggling for many years. So Bhakti Yoga is natural. The senses are allowed to act, but the senses are given superior engagements. So there we are. I'm completing our discussion for this evening. I hope it was valuable for you all. Thank you for attending this discussion on meditation and enlightenment. Hare Krishna.